How's it going, guys? This is Emilio from Max Level Gaming, and today we have something new and very exciting for you. This is our first gameplay video for the new Legion's Realms at War trading card game. This is out of Canada. I definitely recommend checking it out. We have singles and sealed on our website. You can also get any information that you need from the Legion's official website. It has the rule book, all the card images, a link to all the stores, including ours. And today we have the heroes versus the undead. These are competitive decks in our mind, and they're two of the best. This video is going to showcase mostly the strength of the hero deck. Right now, we feel like it's kind of in a place above every other deck and needs to be brought back down towards where the other decks are. I would say the other 7 decks are pretty close in line with each other, maybe with like Titans and Undead being ahead of the rest, which is fine. There's always like a couple really good competitive decks. But right now, the hero deck is almost tier 0, and a lot of people in the community don't seem to share this opinion with us. So we really just wanted to get a video out and show the strengths of this deck and maybe where it needs to be checked a little bit. You're going to see some crazy comboing on my part, and ultimately this was a not very good hand, and I was still able to combo off for quite a bit of time. So Alex is on Undead. I am on the hero deck. If you see any weird missed things here or there, Alex is still a very new player, and even myself included, I'm haven't been playing this game for more than like a few weeks. We will see a pretty big misplay on my part, I believe on my second turn, and it doesn't change the outcome of the game, but it's just something you should keep in mind for the future. So here we are going to get our after mulligan guardian triggers. The undead deck will be milling a card essentially. They'll go through their deck and choose a warrior to put in the grave, whereas I can search a hood card from my deck and add it to my hand. And usually you want to go for help from the hood here. This is a card that sets up a lot of your plays and just kind of thins out your deck, which is something you really want to do with this deck, at least with this particular build. Usually you'll go through almost your entire deck in the whole first turn. So here I open with Enhanced by Hood Magic. This is really good as the starting play because you still have a lot of your arms in deck and you're likely to hit. Here I hit 3, which is really good. We're going to be using those to discard a lot throughout our turn and set up our grave quite a bit here. So my hand's a little awkward. I don't really have the ideal hand. You won't see me doing any of the hand looping that this deck can normally do. So instead, I'm just basically going to put out the best end board I think I can get, which ultimately is still pretty lackluster in comparison to what the deck can normally put out, but it gets the job done. So here, yeah, those go in the grave. Make sure you don't mix up the cards that you're activating. And right now, I'm thinking about how I want to go about getting to my unifieds that give me extra summons. So right here, I just grab back one of my guys with Retrieve to add back Enhanced by Hood Magic, which will mill my deck more and essentially help me see the cards that I want to see. And right here, I pretty much get everything I could ask for. We don't really care about not hitting that many arms because we already hit 3 earlier. So right here, we will use our extra normal. Okay, so we're gonna grab the searcher for the unifieds. And this just gets us access to pretty much anything we could ever want. This card is absolutely fantastic. It's one of the few once per turns in the deck. If you have a good hand, normally you'll get the card that helps you pierce your veil early. But unfortunately, like I said, the hand wasn't fantastic. So we just have to get more engine here. So we grab one of our starters, which searches for any of our one drops that we could want, aside from the one with swipe. And here we activate March of the Resistance. This just lets us draw a gajillion cards. It's ridiculous. This is one of those cards that I feel needs a once per turn errata. Being able to draw just as many cards as I want pretty much throughout the course of the turn is insane, and just isn't something the other decks can do. So here you'll see me search and get 3 of my one attack warriors, and then get an additional normal. The active Unified will also eventually get us another conscript, but it'll be some time before we need to use that. Then we're going to go ahead and play Elijah. This just helps us dig into the deck. We want to get the draw trigger and then Wisdom to really dig deep and see what we can find. And we do get pretty lucky here. We're able to get a pretty solid starter for the deck, an extender. It's Bloodborne 8 and lets you conscript something with 4 attack or less from the deck. We do play 2 of the 4 attack Resistance Warrior specifically for this card. It does trigger the draw because it is a Resistance Warrior, and then does give us 2 extra conscripts. And you might be wondering, well, how are we going to use those when our board is full? But fortunately, Help from the Hood has a grave effect that lets us pop warriors on the board, and it does not have to be our opponents. So we will often clear our own board to get additional triggers, get deeper into our deck, and try to get to the hand loop if we can. But I knew from the opening hand of this game that that wasn't going to be possible. So here, we're just deciding on what we want to grab back. If you have everything you need, you can usually just go for some arms. If not, it's not a big deal. You'll get them back on the next turn anyway. Decks don't really have a capacity to OTK in this game, so there's no fear of not being able to use them later. So here we're going to activate another Help from the Hood. Really what we're trying to do here is get to 8 unique names. So when we banish the Help from the Hood from the grave, we can pop our own guys. Sometimes you don't want to pop 4, you want to do less, but unfortunately I don't believe the card says up to, so we don't really have a choice there. Here we have the Savannah, which is a great tech choice. This also helps us clear the board, and it lets us search for some of our fortifieds. Normally we'll go for the one that negates a conscript of something with 3 attack or less, because those are all of the warriors that have some kind of important effect. And especially in the undead deck, they have a lot of really good parish triggers, and we just don't want that happening. Sometimes we'll also get Deflect, which will protect a very important card we're going to see here soon. So right here we play another Elijah. Again, not once per turn. So we're able to dig even deeper into the deck. I think by the end of this turn, I'm down to like less than 10 cards. And then here we're just counting out our unique names among the armament cards. And we do have all 8 here, so we are going to be able to pop our board pretty effectively and clear some space for more plays. Generally at this point is when you start dropping the warrior with swipe and retrieve. That way we can start ripping cards out of our opponent's hand and get back more of the unifieds or fortifieds that we milled. So now we will finally use March of the Resistance to get the extra conscript. And this is a guy you don't really want to draw. This is just an extra name for the search. You usually discard fodder, or we use him as a chump blocker. And a lot of times we'll put the tall shield on him. The Retaliate is really, really good. So when you put it on something that doesn't ever die, it's just really strong. And here we're just thinking about where else we can go. We've been comboing for almost about 10 minutes now, which again, this isn't something that most of the decks are normally capable of doing. You'll see in some of our future gameplay videos, especially with the starter decks, that there's a lot more back and forth. This game is built from the ground up to be very interactive. Here's another resistance raise an army. Again, not once per turn. So we're able to go back through our deck. Really, we just want the extra summon here. There's all three of the swipe one attacks, which unfortunately cannot be chosen by that card. So we do not have any targets left in deck, which is not the end of the world, because we do still have a few good guys on board. And here we'll get the extra draw. And then we'll use a second chance. Probably didn't have to do this here, but really just wanted to put up as wide a board as I could. Now there's an argument here to get enhanced by hood magic, or even have done it earlier in the turn to try and see the card that pierces the veil. But this is fine also. So on the screen, it looks like we have a 5 attack here, but that's actually not in the deck. This is another copy of the 4. The 5, unfortunately, is very clunky, and we don't need that extra 1 attack. It doesn't really do anything. But the 4 being able to be searched off of that card and still get us a draw is just incredible. 4 attack is a lot in this game. And here we're going to start banishing from the grave here. Eradicating is the proper terminology. And when you eradicate Enhanced by Hood Magic, it lets you grab back a couple of the armaments. Here we get the fortified one just so we can activate it on our opponent's turn and just pump something. It also has a really nice effect when it's sent from the field. It can pop one of your opponent's cards. And then we also grab the shield, so we have the nice chump blocker on board, just to avoid any significant crackback from the undead player. They're very, very good at breaking boards. The deck is very resilient. So now we're going to set some back row, just have a handful of cards left in deck. A very wide board with a lot of follow-up. All of the armaments can be equipped back onto your warriors here, just with the restriction of they can't be equipped after the turn that they are sent, but any other turn is fine. So even if your opponent manages to destroy your warriors on their turn, once you go back to your turn, you can quite easily rebuild a board and put them back on. So we'll see Alex draw for turn here. Most of the starters in this game are unifieds, which is going to bring up my biggest gripe with this deck and why it is so strong. So we'll see Alex attempt to activate one of his strongest cards. This is a card you absolutely do not want to let resolve, and we are not going to. So anti-magic is just, in my opinion, an incredibly oppressive card. It just says your opponent can't play the game. It negates a unified that's activated and says your opponent can't activate unifieds for the remainder of the turn. This card is not once per turn. It's pseudo-searchable. We can mill it and add it back with several different cards. You can play multiple as protection in case they have a response. You can search deflect as protection. It's very hard to play through. There's almost nothing that beats this board going second. I think it's exactly just End of Days. The Exalted Rare for the Demon archetype is the only out to this board practically. So here we'll see him try to conscript a warrior, which we will negate with the Magic Shifting Sands that we searched earlier on our turn. So now he has essentially no turn and has to set pass. And again, this is my main complaint with this deck. Anti-magic is just such a strong card. Probably just doesn't need to exist, or needs to have some kind of generic solid answer. Going first against the hero deck, there are some answers, but there are not a lot, unfortunately. There's a fortified that can eradicate unifieds from the grave, but unfortunately, because everything is basically instant speed in this game, spell speed 2, you can just respond by equipping the unifieds, the armaments from the grave onto your warriors, assuming you have some on the board. So here this is one of two big misplays that I make. I don't know why I do this. I should have just attacked and then done my plays, but I guess I was just getting a little bit greedy or didn't really like what my board state was. It's just a little extra damage. Here we're able to rip a card out of Alex's hand, and then this is my second misplay, and hopefully last of the game. I should have grabbed the anti-magic back from the grave. This is the other problem with the card. Again, you can just grab it back from the grave anytime you want, and then Alex just quite literally would not have had another turn. But because I chose to grab an armament for some strange reason, he will be able to play the game a little bit, unfortunately for us. So here we're going to start equipping armaments from the grave to our warriors. This is the Golden Gauntlet, which is a particularly strong card, which will boost the attack as well as give Valiant, which is quite a powerful keyword. And here we'll also bestow 4 attack and retaliate with the Flail. And then we are not done yet. We have quite a few more to add on. You're going to see the life total at the end of this game is pretty close because of the Bloodborne cost on a lot of these arms. But I don't believe Alex was actually able to punch any damage from attacking, or if he did, it was not a significant amount. And again, that's just the strength of the hero deck. It's incredibly resilient. It's good at everything. Keeps you from playing the game quite often. And even if you break the board, you've seen me break my board twice now and rebuild. You're going to see Alex on the next turn also start to dismantle my board, which again, Undead is very good at. Here we're just thinking pre-combat. And we do start to attack in. He will flip a face-down Fortified. A lot of the Unified and Fortified in this deck are quite strong. They have a lot of synergy. They aren't just like generically good or just one strong card, but they work really well in tandem with each other. Like this card here just gets an effect when it's milled. So unfortunately, I don't have too much of a response. I have some protection here on the Fandorian to avoid pop, and then on the 4 attack, he just can't be targeted by Unified or Fortified, which ends up coming up a lot. So here we do pop with the Savannah, and we just want to get the deflect. At this point, I had realized that I didn't grab anti-magic, so I just didn't want him resolving a starter on his follow-up turn. I'm just making sure I read. Alex has a habit of not removing his counters before draw, so you'll see me do that there. So yeah, the not grabbing the anti-magic will bite me a little bit here. Alex is going to have quite a strong turn, and he will do his best to dismantle the board, as well as put up some protection and follow-up to not lose on the crackback. Because while I do have 52 damage on my Alero here, it's not that big a deal because I'm able to protect myself so much. Whereas Mortis, sitting at 46 is a little bit scarier because of how much Bloodborne is in the deck. And he only has a DCM of 65. So a little bit scary. So here we have Rotting Flesh. Very, very good card. Unfortunately, again, not having the anti-magic, the deflect was all I had to try and stop his turn, and it just wasn't enough. He had a pretty solid hand, which fortunately we didn't have to see on turn one. And unfortunately here he does have another Wrath of the Doomdrake, which is just such a strong card. It does take him quite low on life, but the advantage he gets out of it is just incredible. This card is super strong, whether it's milled by one of the other card effects or if you just hard cast it. One of the best cards in their deck, and here I'm just confirming that it does in fact give him a full board. So these tokens are going to put in some work. He will also try to create some space to loop the Grim Prince and Princess, which is a really strong play that the undead deck has. Yeah, so here he's just cracking in, chipping away. So here we have the Lance, and we are going to go ahead and just pop a token. So right now we're really just trying to keep what's left of our board on it. And here we have a Putrid Poison. This is another very solid card. It just has a lot of utility. So right now he's just looking for his out, which again, the undead deck has quite a few. Its ability to break boards is second to none. It's quite strong. It's quite frustrating to deal with. If you play a deck that doesn't rebuild a board easily, it can get very frustrating to contend with the undead deck. Fortunately, they don't have a lot of attack power, so as long as you're able to apply pressure, you can kind of equalize. Like I said, the decks are very balanced for the most part. It's quite a fun interactive game from the ground up. All of the decks have a unique and fun mechanic worth trying. This is one of the strongest cards in his deck, Imprints of the Grim. It's basically going to revive a warrior from the deck twice. Once when it's activated, and then a once per turn active main ability. And this is what contributes to the loop with the Prince and the Princess. They each have a on-play trigger, retrieve and plunder respectively, and they each have a perish trigger. That makes it quite annoying to deal with them. If you're not eradicating them or removing them in some other way besides destroying them, it is a lot to deal with. Just deciding what he wanted to grab off of the retrieve. And he will activate the Cry of Death. Again, paying quite a bit more life, getting dangerously low here. But not much else he can really do. He has to get through this board or he's just dead on the crackback. So he will get the trigger here. That'll allow him to set the card. It's not going to do much for him as he already has one in play. So here he is grabbing the Princess, and he is going to give us a very bad time. And he will conscript the princess. So this will get the plunder trigger. This is one of my favorite mechanics. Just plunder right into that deck and get a card. And she does also have a perish trigger, which can destroy most any warrior. It's quite strong. So here we have Whispers of the Grim. This is a card that, as it's written now, doesn't function quite properly. And you'll see here, we treat it as being worded target up to, because the card targets in the middle of the effect resolution. And because it is a semi-random effect, you won't know how many targets you have to have when you activate the card. You don't know until you start resolving it. So here we're discussing that. If we were using this as it was read, he would have to pop one of his own cards here, but we just do up to. In this game, targeting is essentially a cost. It's a requirement that needs to be met on activation. In the rulebook, I believe it's called criteria, but it's essentially a cost if you're familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! So here he will swing the princess into the Vandorian, and this is very scary. We do not want this happening because he will quickly chew through our protection and get rid of this. So fortunately the princess is quite small, so he won't get dinged too hard off of the retaliate. Warrior had higher attack, it would be much more of an issue for him, and he probably just wouldn't even be able to get through this board. So here we'll send the shield to protect. Unfortunately, you can only have one of these equipped. It does make perfect sense why, but once he revives the princess, we will not be able to do anything to protect our warrior. Double checking his card. Always good to read your cards, make sure you know what they do. Thinking over how he wants to sequence this, and he does go ahead and get the perish trigger to summon back the Grim Princess. He does forget the Bloodborne, which again, it doesn't really change the outcome of the game. And here he will get the next swing on it after his plunder trigger. Officially broken the board. We will get to pierce our veil on our coming turn, which is going to be a huge help. It'll just draw the last few cards in our deck when we activate our synergy. And here we take 2. Should be at 54, I believe. We'll use our synergy to, get the rest of our cards into our hand. Unfortunately, we are able to conscript 2 extra guys with Defend the King. This is a card you normally want to see on turn 1, but not the end of the world if you don't see it. And then we get the Fandorian triggers here. So he will lose the rest of his hand, essentially, and then we're going to get anything that we could possibly want here. It doesn't really matter what we get. Right now, we're just going for the kill, and we're basically contending with the token. So it's basically a hop, skip, and a jump to lethal here. You're going to see me go back into the grave as well, just to get a couple extra items here soon. Right now I'm just double checking to make sure there's no weird battle tricks, and we're confirming the timing on activation. I believe he wants to use an effect on resolution of the summon. Doesn't really do much for him here, unfortunately. And we do get our last copy of Second Chance. overkill again at this point, but just want to ensure that there's nothing weird keeping us from pushing for game. So now we're just grabbing back everything we need and getting ready to move to combat. I believe we have a couple more in our hand as well. Yep. So we're just going to equip all of those and make a big beefy boy. Set the anti-magic. Just clarifying that I am, going to clear the token so we can punch in for game. And then the Guardian trigger will allow us to pump our guys, and yep, that's lethal. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We won't always do quote-unquote competitive decks like this. We will also have plenty of starter deck gameplay for the newer players. If you have not checked out the rulebook, I definitely recommend checking that out. The copies are available in the starter decks, which are available on our website, maxlevelgaming.com. You can also download the rulebook 1.0 from the Legion Realms at War official website. The rulebook will be getting updated here soon, so keep an eye out for that. Join the official Legion's Discord, and this is Emilio signing off.